Hi there. Today you're going to find out about a really interesting lady. Wild lady, but very interesting. Calamity Jane. In 1876, hordes of people were coming to Deadwood, South Dakota because of the gold rush. Martha Jane Carney was one of them. She came with her parents, born in 1852 in Missouri. 2 years later, her parents were killed by Sioux Indians. She went to live with a military sergeant at Fort Laramie, and he lived with his wife. There she became quite a lady, quite wild, and that's where they gave her the name Calamity Jane. She learned to ride horses, she learned how to hunt, she learned how to fight, she wouldn't back down from any man, and she wore buckskins. She worked for the Pony Express, and she was even recruited by Colonel Custer to help him out. And also in Deadwood at that time, there were many doctors and nurses, and there was a big smallpox outbreak. They had to wait days sometimes for a doctor to arrive. They were waiting one time for Dr. Babcock to come help some men who were quarantined in a cabin. When he finally arrived, he was met at the door by Calamity Jane. It was about time you showed up. The doctor looked around and saw there were 6 men. He said, well, can you take care of them? You'll have to be quarantined. She said, I can do it. She stayed with those men. The doctor said, but if you do, she remembered what he'd said, you might get sick too. But she stayed anyway. Well, guess what happened? 4 men lived, but 2 men died. Calamity Jane stayed well. Another incident when she helped someone out was a young boy. Deadwood was really sick in the hospital. He wanted a sour pickle so bad he kept asking and asking. And the doctor said, no, he can't have it. He might die. But the little boy kept asking. So Calamity Jane said, here, take this sour pickle. And if it makes you really like you might die, I have to stay and take care of you then, don't I? So she did. She stayed and she nursed the little boy back to health. He ate his sour pickle and it was fine. When he was a grown man, he says, I thank my health and my life to that sour pickle and Calamity Jane. She was quite a woman. She was married twice. The only man she ever loved was Bill Hitchcock. And he happened to one day ask her to join him at his Wild West show at the Pan Am Expo in Buffalo, New York. She was quite a woman. She also knew how to bet. One day, she was sitting in Deadwood, South Dakota. She was sitting in front of a store there, and a man walked up and said, that's a fine horse. Is that your horse? She said, yes, it is. His name's Jim. The man said, I bet my horse can outrun that Jim. So she said, are you wagering a bet with me? He said, yes, I am. She said, I get to set the conditions. So he said, okay. So what they did, they both put in $100, and she said, what we're going to do, we're going to ride down this sidewalk here. There's 11 saloons. We need to take our horse into each saloon through the swinging door, walk up to the bar, and get a drink. Guy said, that sounds easy. Little did he know that Calamity Jane had already worked with Jim, and they'd been going into bars for quite a while, and he'd been able to go through the swinging doors, and Jim the horse could even go to the bar, grab a bottle, and start drinking it. Well, because of that training and that practice, Calamity Jane and Jim won. They won by 4 saloons and 5 drinks. Calamity Jane died when she was 50 years old in Deadwood in a mining camp. There was a Methodist church there, and they had a service for her. It was packed. Seated, there was hardly anywhere for people to sit. And at that time, the minister only talked about her virtues and never mentioned her vices. And since Bill Hitchcock was the only man she ever loved, she wanted to be buried next to him, and she was. And one day, though, a couple people were walking by the gravesite, and they saw a man sitting there crying. They walked up to him and said, are you okay? He said, this was my wife, Calamity Jane. I was the first husband. She was the kindest lady I've ever met. So that's the story of a pretty special woman, Calamity Jane.